welcome to my new office. It's a beautiful day here in North Georgia mountains. Absolutely gorgeous weather, right about 70 degrees. Great view, some great cars to look at. Nice in the shade, and our salvage biz is up and running, well, at least in the first stages. We are going to, we've decided, to push forward with the idea for salvage, and the idea being part sales. So we got this, you can see I've already been tearing into it. This week's videos, I'm going to focus on disassembly of all the trunk components in the S500 here. Just a really beautiful day, I'm now officially unemployed in that the severance has run out. I'm going to be getting unemployment, which, while this is still in the hobby stage, it's going to be a while before we start seeing any actual return on our investment, but we will, be able to start getting some inventory going and that sort of thing. And so, I've decided not to pursue the restoration shop for the moment. What I realized is, and I've known this for a while, that, really the money in cars is in parts, but, I've never brought myself to actually chop a car. This one was disabled with a bad ECU. That was the diagnosis that got it parked, and otherwise was a fine functioning car. So it's been parked, sat there for a while. If I were to restore this car, okay, we bought it for $800, and if I were to get it back up and running, used ECU on eBay, $500. Maybe you catch a deal, you get one maybe for $300 or $400, but when I did my quick search, $500. So, okay, so that's 800. It's going to be a couple $100 at least to register it, probably about 300 to register it around here anyway. And so you're at 1100, $500, let's say 400. So you're at 1500, and that's if the diagnosis is in fact correct and it's not something unexpected, so you're in your diagnostic time, you're in your replacement time. An ECU isn't a hard thing to replace, but still, right? And then you're assuming that that's all it's going to take to get it back on the road. So let's just say you're in 2000. Well, this car, if it were running right with the miles, would be worth, as a private seller, something, give or take around 3,000. So let's say, this is a really good shape one. So let's say you put it out there for 3,500, because this has got almost 250,000 miles on it, which is not bad for a Mercedes. That's, that's pretty typical. But, still people aren't gonna, you're not getting top dollar for a 250,000 mile car. So you might be able to ask 35 and get 32 or something like that. Maybe you get 3,000. So if you put 2,000 in, you get 3,000 out. So, you net 1,000. That's a lot of work. And you run into issues of you're only, allowed to buy and sell so much. Depends on the state you're in, how all that works. Most states require licensing at some point to be able to sell vehicles, all that sort of thing. So, the reality is that it would take. That's why one of the reasons why used car lots have such high markup, because they'll buy one of these cars at auction for, say, $2,500. They'll turn around and post it for 5,000. Typically with doing almost nothing but cleaning it up. But as a private seller, and the licensing is one of the things that makes lots, viable, because you have to do more and so forth. Well, I'm not going to do a car lot. I don't want that. I like to be flexible to be able to buy and sell my cars, but I don't, that's not going to be where the money is. The real money, I think, and this is going to be the experiment that we're going to push forward with. The real money is in the parts. So again, like this car, so different scenario now, right? This car, what did we do? Well, 800 bucks. We're not registering it. You're supposed to, we're waiting on getting the title from the seller, because we bought the car actually from the son-in-law of the owner, who is living in his house, and the owner of the vehicle, the one who had parked it, has moved, I believe, to Virginia, the guy was saying. So, it's got a title, but we're still waiting on the title, but we're not going to get it registered. We're going to relinquish the title. And that is that and again, different states do this differently. I know Georgia, it tells you on the title, if you're salvaging this vehicle, you need to relinquish this to the state. That lets them know that this is a totaled car, right? As in, it's not going to be on the road again, and it takes it off their books. But that, as far as I understand, that doesn't cost anything, unlike registering it, which you have to pay a tax and so forth. Again, it would probably be about 300 bucks to register this car because it's a high-end car. So in this scenario, though, so you're not having to pay registration, you're not having to pay insurance, right? We're not going to insure this. It's just parts, and we're still at only $800. We're not having a monthly deduction because we're not insuring. At least at this stage, if we get a full-on business going, we'll probably get a business insurance that would just blanket cover all of our cars and so forth. But at this stage, it's just the one. Potentially the 300E. We still are in the process of discerning if that's going to be a wreck or restore. So 800 bucks, nothing else. We spent $400 on that old dolly, which is a lot of fun because it's really rickety, but it worked, and it's custom design. Whatever, it did its job. It got it back. It was a little hair raising. This car here is equipped with air ride, and it has deflated, and because the engine won't turn on, it's not running the compressor, and so it's like way down on its haunches. You can see the fender up there where it's just sitting way down on its haunches. As I'm clearing out around it, I'm going to level it out. I'm going to jack up to one side and get it up on some blocks to at least level it so it's not sitting at a horrible angle. But okay, so back to our scenario, 800 bucks in, and we bought the dolly for 400. So even if you factor it into the price of this, we're at $1,200. And now I've been pulling parts. I've probably put about a solid day's labor into it. I think I've probably got somewhere between $800 and $1,200 of parts out of it. Just in a day's work, and that's just in the trunk. And I did pull one of the side mirrors, but yeah, I mean, it's it just seems almost like a no-brainer. We're in the trunk, right? We're not even to the good stuff yet. The interior, the engine. Oh, and it's going to be so much fun. I'm going to get to tear apart a Mercedes engine, get all of the parts. Oh, it's exciting. I think and because of the fact that I'm not having to worry about reassembly, it's expediting the disassembly process, and just makes it that much easier. And I really do love restoring stuff, so I'm going to get to restore individual parts. Make them all nice, and I get to, contribute to the grand effort of restorationists and sell them good working OEM parts. I mean, these Benzes are just as solid as can be. So, real exciting. I think that we're off and running. My going into it estimate, I'm just gonna say I think that out of this $800 car, we can pull $8,000 of parts. That's going to be my bid on the price is right, so we'll see. Oh, there goes Lauren in our beautiful 400 SEL, off to her classes and off to get Sinclair after her classes. But very exciting stuff. Sean is going to be handling the eBaying aspect of it, so that you know, I'll pull the part, get it cleaned up, and inventory it, and then he's taking the inventory and doing all the selling side of it. So I think we've got a good division of labor, plays to our strengths. You know, my commute to the office is 30 seconds down the hill. That's a nice facet, and I can have Ruth at home, and you know, no problem. Um, I think it's just it seems like a really good option for us at this point. That'll give me something to do. It'll give me something positive to put myself into, and you know, who knows? We might get a successful business going. So for this week's projects, we are just going to be starting into our salvage of our new parts vehicle, the 2000 S500 Mercedes-Benz. What a great car. It's just the perfect car to get started on. It's really fun to do the disassembly because you get to see how everything is put together, and it's like a puzzle box where you're trying to unlock each new layer as you get deeper and deeper into it. So this week we're going to show, you know, a little bit of the processes of how we got this thing home and pulled into the woods and so forth. The Rover and the Jeep both did excellent. The Jeep hauled this sucker back almost 100 miles, and the Rover winched it and towed it right up into the woods. Great vehicles. And we're going to get into the disassembly of trunk components, all the amp, the various things in the trunk, the carpet pieces, the tail lights, getting into all the various trunk systems, the vacuum assembly, and so forth. Our new acquisition, 2000 Mercedes S500, high miles, almost made 260 before it got parked, but overall in quite good condition. A few things that you'll notice right off the bat: it is sitting like a super low rider because it does have an air ride, and I have not gone through at all to see what systems work and which don't yet, but I have Ruthie's baby here admiring the car. But otherwise in very good overall shape. This was originally an $80,000 car. Monsters? Yeah. Where's Monsters? Up there. Up there. Up there. That's just a guy hammering on his house. Don't worry about it, honey. Yeah, I get Monsters. But we got this beat old dolly trailer, which, as you can see, has done a little damage to it, and we also had some interesting time getting it up on there. But you know, the money in this car is in all of the sensors, fuses, secondary stuff. Door panels. These are nice solid door panels. Every bit of it just about is good. You know, you got the one piece missing there, but all of this, all of the electronics here, you know, the steering wheel's cracked, but the interior's not in terrible shape. The dashboard is good. You know, even peripherals like the rearview mirror, the the sun visors, all these sorts of things. Yeah. So it's going to take some work, but you know, I think we'll have a really solid vehicle to turn into parts. Again, this was a $80,000 car. We got it for 800 bucks. It had been sitting for a while, and you know, it's supposed to have a dead ECU. That was the estimation from the seller. But yeah, there's a little cut in the seat there. You're right. But you know, this vehicle has the you driving it, Ruthie? This has the 5-liter V8 Benz engine, so same thing that was in the E500 that I just traded. So I've got some familiarity with it, such as, you know, I know there's 16 spark plugs in this sucker, and I noticed just right off the bat that it has a different air ride than what I was dealing with. So you'll notice here, I find that of interest, that you have metal to metal. Notice that? See the nut, which this nut is standard. It's the same kind of nuts that I was using on the E500, but it actually screws into metal there, which is then molded into the plastic head of the strut. The E500 that I worked on, it was metal into plastic, and that's why you had a leaky strut, which I was able to patch effectively, but not the greatest design, especially since this is an older car and has that insight. That's odd. I find that odd. Why the difference in the air ride? Why would they go from metal to metal to plastic? Doesn't make much sense. But I mean, even just peripherals like the engine cover, intake box, all of this is going to take me just a few minutes to rip apart. In a day's time, I will have picked off the engine, all the easy things to get off, and we'll probably have 100 things to list by the end of the week. This car is just a gold mine of parts, especially for 800 bucks. There's the man himself, Jeep Meister, and it was quite an adventure to go down and get this. But if we can get this onto that rickety ass old dolly and get it home 100 miles, then we are in the right business. But a lot of parts money in this thing. A lot of parts money. Yep. You like that steering wheel? Yeah. Yeah. You can have it if you want. I don't think anybody's gonna want that thing.
Happy birthday.
Right? Yep. All sorts of buttons. Press away.
Windows just rolled themselves down.
Yeah, that's funny. It's like the regulator, just like with all the bumps, was just because they lowered progressively as we drove.
Oh, true.
Except for this one. It was the only one that didn't. Yeah.
Probably rattled to its core.
Oh, well, and you see the damage that, like, this is a salvage only dolly.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to put a car on this that you want to keep, because it did some significant, and it's because it swivels. And all the swivel action, that's why they have this on there, so it doesn't swivel into the tire, but then it swivels into the chassis. So. But, I mean, we knew we were sacrificing the back bumper skin. That was part of the equation when we were like, how are we going to get this daggum thing on there? Because, you know, we had to roll it up onto blocks first, then back the dolly up to it, and I've got pictures for all of this. We ran a line under it. We used our tow cable thing to run a line under it to a second Jeep that was in front, which then hauled this the like 12 inches or whatever to get it up onto the actual dolly itself. It was quite a maneuver. But, you know, oh, look at that monkey. Look at that monkey. You being a monkey? Uh-huh.
An $80,000 car
Right.
turns into a jungle gym.
Right. It is now my daughter's playground. Yep. And I think while I'm out here working on it, she can just do this. You know? She can just sit in it and play.
Yeah.
I'm driving, okay. As I'm popping things off. Yep. And when you get a little bit older, maybe you can start helping me pop stuff off. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even things like this. Door trim.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's 5 minutes. Pop, pop, pop. You got that off. And these are in good shape. I mean, the interior is in solid shape. The rubber's good.
For like
Yeah.
$100.
Yeah. And that's why I looked at this car. I was like, this is, probably, I mean, there's just so much in parts right here. And the name of the game is going to be not rushing, so I'm not, because you don't want to damage the parts as you're taking them off, you know. So I'm just got to be careful and just not force screws and pull on stuff too hard. It's just going to be a matter of having a light touch to keep everything good and intact. But the parts that I can get off this thing are going to be worth some serious bank. And it's a jungle gym, yay! Woo! We'll leave that on for extra long.
Right.
You having fun, Ruthie? Whee!
Last thing, take it off.
My Land Rover just got to feel like a real Land Rover. I just pulled it up here. We're going to use this to, we're going to get the S500 off of the back of the dolly, and then use the winch attached to this to pull it into position. And I just took it up, right up the side of that hill. Absolutely no problem. It didn't even skip a beat, even all this foliage. I mean, I didn't do anything to prepare that path. I just, well, let's see how it does, and it just boop, 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 right up the side of the hill. Absolutely no problem. I am just so impressed with this. For putting this into low, there's instructions right there, but you have to be basically stopped. It says 0 to 5. You really ought to be totally stopped. And you put the trans into neutral, and it takes, I mean, you have to put a little force into it, you know. It takes a bit, but you have to drop your transfer case, that's the smaller transmission lever, into neutral. Everything will ding, ding, ding. You get a warning light that looks like gears with a cross over it. That's saying that you're not in gear. Your transfer case is in neutral, and then you push it forward into low, and you'll hear it go and lock the differential. And if you've got a locking differential one, which is to be preferred, if you have one of those few that from 2001 to early 2003 that doesn't have the locking differential, you can get a kit that will activate it. But it is very, very nice. It absolutely just crawled up that hill like I was just driving up a driveway. I was amazed. So got it in position here, and next step is get the S500 off, roll it down some, and then use the winch to bring her home and bring her to her final resting place. Park and brake in. Alright. Are we off the trailer? Yeah. Okay. I was just going to say you probably want to pull the trailer out, because when it goes down, it's already started to do the work. Now. Yeah, whatever. Let's try to pull it off. It's ready to go. Pull it off. I don't think there's going to do any more damage than it's already done. Not 12,000 pounds, that's about right.
That was fun.
The final resting place of this 2000 Mercedes S500. Rest in peace. May your sacrifice go towards the restoration of other epic cars. And hooray, hurrah for the Land Rover. That thing was epic. Not only did the winch work perfectly, but check this angle out. This thing on, not even trail, we're talking soft forest dirt covered in dry leaves. It pulled this probably a good 10 feet, just and it was just spinning wheels for a second there, and Sean and I were both like, is this happening? And then it caught, and it just blub 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 pulled up the hill without even breaking a sweat. Man, this rig is just awesome. Epic, epic, epic. Had a bit of a mishap there, dropped the camera, and since the shockproof housing doesn't have very good volume for the microphone, I've been removing it. So I was worried for a second there. I thought I killed my camera, but it's all right. So yeah, I pulled this out. So, you know, this is in the trunk compartment like this. So if you're coming at it, this front part, you'll notice right here is actually made to, this is where the tail light assembly is. So it's made to open so you can very easily remove the tail lights if you got a broken bulb or something. It makes that easy to get to because you don't have to actually remove the whole piece to get down there. But it had one on the back side, both had the same. There's just one retaining nut, which was a T15 torque screw. Pretty easy to get out. It's just the one retaining, and that was it. And otherwise, it's all just in there because it's very carefully molded. Like for example, this is where the fuel line comes, the fuel trunk going to the gas tank comes through there. So it's all, you know, very carefully positioned in there. But so far, very easy removal. Let me show you what we've been doing here, what I've been doing here. Just spent basically one afternoon, and I'm getting close to being done pulling everything out of the trunk compartment. You can see here, everything disassembled now. So we got the tire and all that out. I still have the one piece of carpet, the back piece left to remove. But both side pieces were pretty easy to remove. This assembly I pulled up out of there. It had, I think, 3 retaining bolts, all 8mm, to get those out. And this has the sound system, at least this piece here, which I've got to pull all of that apart. A lot of wiring incorporated into there. I'm not exactly sure what that fancy looking thing is. I gotta look up the part numbers online, see what I'm looking at exactly. But all this electronics and everything, good money in this, and everything in this car is very well kept. You know, it's dusty because it's been sitting, but the actual, you know, parts are in really great shape. For example, the tail lights are just immaculate. They're, you know, it's rare to find a tail light that doesn't have some kind of crack in it, and both of these are just in perfect condition. So this thing really is a gold mine. It was very easy to pull off the tail light. By the way, you had 3, 1, 2, 3 there, and the tricky one that you might not notice right off is there. Okay, so all of those are 8mm nuts, but that's the one that, you know, it holds. You can see the V there for the side of the tail light, and that one holds it up against the car. And very good condition and everything. So, you know, I've just put a half a day, basically, maybe about 3 hours into it at this point, and getting close to being done just for the day, but already got a bunch of parts. And our method is I'm taking pictures and tagging everything, cleaning it as I go, and then I'm going to hand all of that over to Sean with all of the details, height, weight, all that kind of stuff, and give him the pictures, and then he's going to handle all the eBay business side of it. So, so far so good. I think this is a really great plan. You know, there are a lot of good parts in this car. Even, you know, just the body pieces, the molding, the trim, the carpet, all that stuff. I mean, that's, you know, for people out there that are restoring these cars, that's the pieces you want. So, you know, this car will have given its life to, you know, improve other Mercedes out there. So, noble death, even if a somewhat ignoble resting place. They're kind of shoved in the woods, but rest in pieces, our good S500. Still working here on disassembling all the trunk components, coming along really well. We got the piece of carpet that was on the trunk there is very easy to get off. Very easy. It just has tab clips, just like a door panel. I'm in the process of removing the lock mechanism. You got two large, I believe they're T30 torque head bolts there, and then this linkage, which it's all very careful. This has a very precise little piece there, but it just opens very easily. You just gotta be very careful with it. And, you know, you just put a screwdriver in there and turn it, flathead, and that pops open. That will drop your linkage, and then you can remove the assembly here. And I'm not sure what all this is about, but pretty easy to pop these lines off here, but not terribly hard to get to. Again, everything that I've found so far, they always backwards engineer it, so you can remove it without, you know, a huge amount of effort. So far, I mean, I've spent one day on this and I've almost completely disassembled the trunk. So this gives me a lot of hope as to what we'll be able to pull out of this car. A lot of sensors, a lot of units like the amp and antenna, all these different things. So really making great progress on this, and it's a lot of fun too. I really actually enjoy this. Some people would probably find this tedious, but I think this is fascinating to see how this stuff comes apart, and so far so good. Ruthie, what you doing, chocolate face? You got a chocolate goatee? Okay, the trunk vacuum assembly was amazingly easy to get out. So there is a weird foam housing which keeps it in there, and so you lift this, pop the outside foam housing off. There are two plugs on the back side of it, and then it's just in there by tension and friction of the foam and the foam housing around it. There's not actually anything holding it into the car, so surprisingly easy removal. Particularly happy about this because that is a high price item. New, these run for over $600. Used, they're over $200 on eBay. So that is a quick and good thing to get out. And if you're having an issue with it, not really all that difficult to take out to replace. So good to know there. So working here on removing the weather seal that goes around the trunk. Very important piece of rubber to have there. That keeps all the water moving around. So we've already got this pulled off. It was a very easy thing to do. The trim piece, very simple. These are little pop-out brackets. You just get your little screwdriver flat blade in there, and it's 2 pieces. The one drives in there. Very simple. You can see all the rivets very well laid out. So once you have popped that out, I think they call that the trunk skid plate. So we've got our little small flat blade screwdriver. You know that you have to get that out because it's pinching this in, right? But after you've got that out, I started hitting it with my PB blaster and working it up, spraying into the groove, right? Because you've got to get it to let go. And right here, just, you know, slow and patient is the name of the game. Now if you're removing, you know, a dead one that you're discarding, then who cares, rip it off. But I'm taking this off for salvage, for resale value. So I'm going to very carefully, very gradually work my screwdriver in and just get it to break loose. Again, you're not pushing hard because you don't want to, it'll run right through if you push too hard. But, you know, just take your time, work it around. Not a terribly hard thing to do, but again, if you're salvaging or you're taking one off to clean, a lot of times the rubber itself is fine. This is a trade secret of a sort that you go into the dealer and say, "Oh, my trunk is leaking." They say, "Oh, the seal is bad." So they, you know, I don't even want to guess how much one of these seals is installed at a Mercedes place. I don't know, $500, $800, wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it's a significant piece of rubber. The issue is that a lot of times it just needs to be resealed. Now this is really significant rubber. Oh, and there is plastic back here too, so we're going to have to get, and all of this gets crusted over, so we'll have to get a little deeper into it. There is a plastic piece there that's going to have to come off that is also, you can see, biting down into it right there. And so we'll have to remove that trim piece as well. No big problem, you know. Just one of those things that you just have to be real careful about. But now this is, again, Mercedes is so well designed. This has got the plastic trough, a lot of them, but you know, this is where water incursion can occur, right there. Very unlikely. This is a really good, that would take a lot to stop that up, but a lot of times it doesn't even actually need the new rubber. It just needs to be resealed, and you get like crap in the inside of their gunk that builds up and then causes moisture to flow over this, you know, under and around the lip. I know that I did this exact same thing with my 2002 Jaguar S-Type, which had a leaky trunk, and I didn't even, all I had to do was take the rubber off, clean it real good, get all the gutters cleaned out, and just reseal it on there just by pressing down, because these seals have embedded little metal brackets in them, which causes them to bite down. They're very advanced tech. I mean, it's an expensive piece, but a lot of times it doesn't need to be replaced. The only time you need like real replacement is if it's cracked and worn. This one, there's only one little crack and it's way down here at the bottom, so no big a deal. But as long as it doesn't look like it's falling apart, these things can usually be reconditioned. So I had my first fail. I cracked the rear license plate trim cover when it was coming off. I got in the 4, there's 6 bolts. Okay, I've gotten 4 of them. I didn't recognize there was 2 in the middle. And so when I was leveraging it, it's very brittle. It's not a very thick piece of fiberglass, so it busted off. But needed to do that. I'm still trying not to cut this because that's an important harness piece. So I'm trying to preserve this harness piece. In order to do that, because I don't want to cut either the rubber seal or the harness, I'm having to actually completely disable the harness and unplug it, which requires going in through here. There are your bolts for taking this out. You're not going to be able to get this off without taking the trim off. Be very, very careful when taking that trim off. Working on trunk disassembly still. Here we've gotten the lock piece. Once we got the 3 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, then it very easily came out. So far so good. The only thing I've had any trouble with was the trim piece that goes here. So we'll be taking these out, and it was necessary to get all of that so I could pull the wiring harness, so I could get that piece of rubber, that rubber seal off there intact. And the hi Ruthie. Oh, it's got a very peculiar mechanism in here. That is the intention of this box here, which just had a single piece of trim. I'm not sure where that trim ended up. I think I already took it up top. And it had this very peculiar spacer in there, and you see how it's designed, the hole. So you pop this out, and then you can pop the trim piece, which has tabs around the edge, and that'll get you in there. That way I could actually get the wiring harness out, all this, which is a very interesting system because it's intended to wind, right, so that it coils up, and it has these 2 springs there so that it's on a U, right, and that way it feeds back in there, so there's no chance for the wiring to get pinched or you know, bunched up in there. And so that's pretty cool. Also went ahead and pulled that piece off where part of the positive goes into there, and it unplugs these 3 plugs. The biggest one, the smaller 2, you just pinch and pull off. The big one has a lever lock, so you pop up the lever lock and then you can pull the 3rd one out. And it just had the 1 bolt holding it on there. So far so good. Here I have the left side's driver side mirror removed from the S500. We really lucked out with a lot of the trim pieces like this. They're in absolutely perfect shape. I went ahead, even though I'm working from the back to the front, I went ahead and prioritized this. I have to check and see if it's compatible, but the guy that I just traded the E500 for, the driver's side mirror is all wonky where it's got the, because this has the auto dimming glass, and sometimes the auto dimming glass separates, which is happening in his case. So I'm going to see if I can just get the glass out of this, and if it's compatible. But if not, we've got a nice part here to salvage sale parts. Removal is a little bit tricky, but not terribly hard. So you have, get some good light here, you have this metal casing on the inside. Actually, that's too bright. There we go. That's a little better. Okay, so you've got this metal casing on the inside. It's very sturdy. The plastic part just has clips that pop onto that. So this is the arm that actually swings, because you can flatten these up against the side of the vehicle if you need to, for parking and that sort of thing. Make sure somebody doesn't ding you. So you have this, right, and this swivels, right, on that. Now it's held onto the frame of the car. You can see I've cut the wires here for sale. I always try to pull as much of the wire as possible before I cut it. So, you know, somebody buying this will have as much as they can get their fingers on for splicing in. So, and this one, the only damage to it was the rubber around it is just really gross and falling apart. So, you know, that's the only problem with this. Now, again, popping it out is pretty straightforward. First, you get the housing open like that. So you've separated the plastic from the metal, and there are 3. 1, 2, 3. There are 3 screws, T15 torque screws, that are holding it in there. Now, the tricky part is that you pretty much will have to have because you go in through here, see, straight across to get to that one. That's the toughest one to get to. This one, you collapse the metal housing flat against the car, and it's pretty easy to get to. This one is very simple to get to on the front, but this was the tricky one. You have to have a torque bit screwdriver to get in there, or at least potentially need to. You can't use, so I had you know, my socket ratchet set that I used to get the first two off, but this one I could not get the angle in there, and I just got a new set of screwdrivers to supplement to make it easier on me. And so I've got a universal head one. You know, most of my torque bits I use are the little screwdriver bits, but it was just a little bit too fat to get in there. It's a really tight fit right there, and so you really only have to have a screwdriver. And so I ended up using a flathead that was just exactly the right size that I could squish it into the star drive and get it to turn out. That wasn't ideal, but it did work. So if you're stuck in the same kind of position as me and you don't have a T15, I've got a T10 and a T20 in a regular screwdriver, but only the T15 in the bit. So that took it off, and otherwise was not a terribly difficult disassembly. So the disassembly of the mirror itself, not the whole assembly, which I've already talked through, but just the mirror itself is actually really easy. I could have, if I had just been replacing this, just popped it off, getting a screwdriver down the back side there, and you have that glue pad, right? There's the glue pad. There's one connector, which is very easy to get off, and that has all of the electronics for the dimming feature and so forth. So if you're looking to replace just the mirror, very easy, just a few minutes work. You know, you need to make sure you have a good kind of adhesive to reattach it, because it is rather substantial. This is more than just a you know, piece of glass. There is electronics, and it's rather heavy, as was everything in a Mercedes. They build this stuff to last. So, but otherwise, very easy disassembly, real quick forward. If you're just looking to replace the glass, I'd say 30 minutes or less total time. And that's, you know, just being careful and working slowly. I mean, that's the real thing is, you know, you just want to be very careful as you're separating it that you're not, you know, causing any fractures in the glass. But otherwise, great, very easy.
Dear Lord, I come to you this week with a heavy heart of anxiety and uncertainty. There is just so much suffering, so much pain in this world, and we need you so badly. Please come into our lives, show us your light, show us your love, raise us up when we have fallen. Show us, give us what we need. We so desperately need your light and your love and your companionship. I ask that you give me guidance, show me the way forward. It's sometimes really hard to see where I'm supposed to be going, having put so much of my life into my teaching and my education, and now I find myself maybe starting a salvage business. It's hard to see how this is part of the big plan, but despite everything, I trust that you have a purpose for me. I trust that you have a purpose for every human life, that we are all precious in your sight, and I ask that you help us to find that purpose and actualize it in our lives. In the precious name of Jesus Christ, your Son and our Savior, I pray. Amen.